12:00 p.m. January 7th, 2026. On the bridge of the tanker Marinara, the captain is finally relaxing. He's convinced that just a few hundred feet beneath his hull, a $400 million improved Kilo-class submarine Russia's Black Hole is standing guard ready to shred any American cutter that dares to get close. He thinks he's won. What he doesn't know is that for the last 45 minutes, a coordinated US-Ukrainian acoustic net has already neutralized his protector, leaving the submarine deaf-blind and retreating in chaos. In exactly 120 seconds, the Marinara will find itself completely alone, facing the full weight of a U.S. Coast Guard tactical team that is already fast roping onto its deck. To understand how we got to this standoff in the North Atlantic, we have to go back to late December 2025. In the warm, turquoise waters of the Caribbean, a tanker named the Bella One was sitting low in the water loading millions of barrels of Venezuelan crude, a direct violation of heavy international sanctions. The crew was feeling lucky. They thought the vastness of the ocean was their best hiding spot, but they didn't realize that 200 miles away, the USCGC Monroe, a 418 FT Legend-class national security cutter, had already tagged them. Think of the Monroe not just as a ship, but as a floating fortress of sensors. They didn't need to be close enough to see the white of the smuggler's eyes. They just needed to keep their digital leash tight. The Belawan crew eventually got spooked and decided to make a run for it. They pushed their engines to a blistering 15 knots, which is basically the maritime equivalent of a turtle trying to outrun a hawk. They spent weeks zigzagging across the Atlantic, desperately trying to blend into the chaotic traffic of global shipping lanes. But here's the thing about modern warfare. You can't hide from a Boeing P-8A Poseidon. Flying at 25,000 FT, the setup, AI predictive tracking, joint US and British crews were using the ANAPS 154 advanced surveillance radar to scan hundreds of miles of ocean every second. The radar operators are looking for three specific death signals. First, a speed that doesn't match the vessel's profile. Second, of course, that deviates from standard shipping lanes. And third, the absence of an AIS transponder signal. It's like trying to drive a car at night without any lights on. The Bella One hit all three strikes before they even cleared the Caribbean. In a desperate, almost hilarious move to avoid seizure, the crew painted a fresh Russian flag on the hull and renamed the ship the Marinara. They thought this diplomatic paint job would deter the U.S. Coast Guard from taking action. But that was their fatal mistake. By officially claiming Russian protection, they forced the Kremlin to save face. Moscow couldn't let their new asset be humiliated, so it sent the only thing it had nearby, an improved Kilo-class submarine. The Marinara crew cheered when they heard their black hole protector was on the way. They thought the trap was set for the Americans. Little did they know, the Americans and some brilliant technical geniuses in Ukraine had already turned that rescue mission into a one-way ticket to failure. The chase was over. This wasn't just a Coast Guard mission anymore. This was the maritime equivalent of the Avengers assembling in the middle of a freezing ocean. Leading the pack was the USCGC Monroe, but she wasn't alone. Circling high above was a perfectly tuned orchestra of Boeing P-8A Poseidons, some with the Star-Spangled Banner and others with the Royal Air Force Roundel. To keep this high-stakes pressure cooker running, the British sent in the RFA Sprint and Drift, failed evasion tide force, a massive tanker that acted like a mobile gas station, ensuring the Alliance never had to take their eyes off the prize for even a second. But here is the secret sauce, the part that Moscow's high command is still scratching their heads over Ukraine. While the world thought Kiev was only focused on the trenches in Donbass, the technical geniuses at the SVU and GUR were busy playing 4D chess in the Atlantic. By taking years of raw data from their SEAB drone strikes in the Black Sea, they've developed an AI pattern recognition system that can predict Russian naval behavior better than the Russians can. They weren't just guessing where the rescue submarine was, they were calculating its arrival down to the exact nautical mile. Through a secure NATO battle link, these Ukrainian specialists were feeding live coordinates directly to the Monroe, turning the entire North Atlantic into a transparent fishbowl. And who is the big fish swimming into this digital spiderweb? Russia's prized improved Kilo-ass submarine. On paper, this thing is a nightmare. It's 242 ft of cold Russian steel, capable of diving nearly 1,000 ft into the dark abyss. Its hull is covered in specialized and aeolic tiles. Basically, a high-tech rubber skin designed to swallow sonar pings like a sponge. In the Kremlin, they call it the black hole because it's supposed to be the quietest thing in the ocean. At $400 million a pop, Moscow was betting the farm that this invisible ghost would make the Americans blink and let their oil tanker go. It's almost cute, isn't it? The Russians really thought they were the hunters lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. What they didn't realize is that their sentences are about to be carried out. 1:21 p.m. Inside the Russian Kilo-class submarine, the commander decides to stop playing hide and seek. He wants to dominate. He orders a sprint and drift maneuver, pushing his electric motors to a sustained 17 knots. This creates a massive cavitation wake, a deliberate roar in the water meant to announce his presence like a gunshot. His goal, to wash out the USCGC Monroe sonar and force the Americans to back away from the tanker. It's a bold professional move. For a moment, the Russian crew feels like the apex predators again. They even launch a series of acoustic ghosts, small decoys that mimic the signature of a full-size submarine trying to flood the Alliance's screens with 5 different targets. But this is where the Ukrainian factor changes the math of the ocean. In a high-tech command center in Kiev Gore, specialists are watching the raw acoustic data streamed via satellite. Their AI trained on thousands of hours of Russian naval patterns' sonobuoy grid. The acoustic sledgehammer doesn't blink. While the American operators see 5 potential threats, the Ukrainian algorithm flags 4 of them as digital artifacts. They filter out the noise and pinpoint the exact location of the real black hole with surgical precision. Through the Link 16 network, the US and British P-8A Poseidons receive a single verified set of coordinates. The Russian ghosts are ignored. The real target is painted in red. High above the Alliance responds with overwhelming technical force. 2 P-8As bank into a coordinated circle of fire. In a matter of seconds, they release a massive curtain of over 100 high-sensitivity sonobo. These aren't just listening devices, they are active hunters. They hit the water and begin a synchronized ping sequence that creates a localized acoustic grid. The Russian commander tries to fight back. He orders his electronic warfare suite to jam the sonobuoy uplinks. For a few seconds, the Alliance's data feed flickers. The tension on the Monroe's bridge is thick enough to cut with a knife, but the P-8A immediately switch to a frequency-hopping logic, a technical countermove that bypasses the Russian jamming like a master key sliding into a lock. Then, the Alliance delivers the acoustic sledgehammer. A U.S. Poseidon dives to low altitude and releases 2 Mark 54 training torpedoes. These don't carry explosive warheads, but they are packed electronic warfare, jamming versus frequency, hopping with high-output acoustic emitters. As they spiral down toward the Kilo class, they ignite a series of significant acoustic events. Inside the Kilo, the experience is total sensory chaos. The $400 million sonar arrays the eyes of the submarine are instantly cauterized by the massive influx of white noise. The Russian crew isn't being hit by explosives, but their ship is being tactically blinded. Their screens go white. Their sensors are screaming overload. The commander realizes the terrifying truth. His submarine would have been neutralized 5 minutes ago. Arrogance turns into a frantic retreat. The order is given for an emergency deep maneuver. The Kilo class tilts its nose down and plunges toward the 1,000 FT mark, desperately trying to find a thermal layer where the sound might not follow. They release a final cloud of bubble screens and acoustic flares, but it's a move of pure desperation. The black hole is no longer a predator. It's a blind, deaf animal running for its life into the deep Atlantic trenches. Ironically, the Alliance didn't need to fire a single live shot to uninstall the Russian submarine from the battlefield. When the savior is gone on the surface, the tanker Marinara is now a sitting duck, a 200,000-ton steel island of illegal oil floating in total isolation. But that silence is about to be shattered. From a Royal Air Force base in the UK, the Night Stalkers of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment have arrived. These aren't your typical search and rescue guys. These are the pilots who fly into the mouth of hell for a living. 2 MH-60 Seahawks and a single menacing MH-6 Little Bird, the killer egg, are ghosting just 20 ft above the white-capped waves. They are flying nap of the Earth style, hiding in the sea spray to stay off any last-minute Russian radar until they are right on top of the target as they pull up alongside the Marinara's massive stern. The air begins to scream. The pilot of the lead Seahawk activates the long-range acoustic device. This isn't just a loudspeaker, it's a sonic weapon. At 162 dB louder than a jet engine at point-blank range, a voice booms across the deck in both English and Russian, "Stop your vessel." The submarine retreats. Blind and deaf, prepare for boarding. This is the United States Coast Guard. Inside the tanker's bridge, the Russian captain is clinging to his console. The rotor downwash from the helicopters is creating a localized hurricane, smashing salt spray against the windows and making the entire 800 FT ship shudder. But he's stubborn. He's under orders from Moscow not to stop. He keeps the engines at full throttle, hoping to reach international waters where he thinks the rules don't apply. That was a very expensive mistake. The Night Stalkers don't do second warnings. The Little Bird tilts its nose down and lets loose. Red flares arc through the sky, lighting up the gray Atlantic like a violent sunrise. At the same time, the Seahawk's door gunner opens up with a warning burst of 50 caliber tracers. These glowing rounds skip across the water just yards in front of the Marinara's bow, creating geysers of white foam that look like a minefield of liquid glass. The message is clear. The next burst won't be in the water. It will be in your engine room. The authorization from the USCGC Monroe comes through on an encrypted channel. Green light, execute. This is where the operation shifts from negotiation to calculated violence. The Seahawks hover directly over the Marinara's deck, their massive rotors kicking up a blinding fog of diesel fumes and sea salt. The cabin doors slide open, and the Navy SEALs and Coast Guard tactical law enforcement fast rope boarding. Seizing the tanker teams don't just jump, they descend. In a blur of black gear and high-tech equipment, the operators fast rope onto the moving deck. It's a masterclass in physics and timing. The ship is pitching in 10 FT swells. The wind is howling at 40 knots, and these guys are sliding down a nylon rope like they're on a Sunday afternoon stroll. As soon as their boots hit the steel, the non-P pyrocnic stun grenades begin. Multiple 9-bang distraction devices are tossed onto the bridge and the engineering access points. These aren't just big firecrackers. They are localized whiteout events. The bridge of the Marinara is suddenly filled with 7 million candela of light and 170 dB of pressure. To the Russian sailors inside, the world has just ended. They are blinded, deafened, and completely disoriented. Before the smoke even clears, the tactical teams have breached the bridge. They move with a surgical precision that makes a Swiss watch look clumsy. No one is attacking individuals, they are neutralizing the environment. In less than 120 seconds, the helm is seized, the throttle is cut, and the engine room is placed under lockdown. The massive heart of the Marinara, its 10,000 horsepower diesel engine, groans and falls silent. The Russian crew, who just minutes ago were laughing and waiting for their black hole protector to save them, are now face down on the deck, staring at the polished boots of American operators. They are physically fine, but psychologically shattered. They just watched their $400 million strategic escort get humiliated by a sonar grid and then saw their own invincible tanker taken over in the time it takes to brew a pot of coffee. The Marinara is no longer a Shadow Fleet ghost. It is now a floating crime scene. dead in the water and under the total control of the Alliance. The trap hasn't just been sprung, it has been executed with a level of professionalism that leaves no room for debate. The North Atlantic is officially closed for illegal Russian business. This wasn't just a seizure, it was a total systemic collapse of the Russian shadow fleet. The Marinara, along with its millions of barrels of sanctioned crude, is now a frozen asset. The ship's control systems have been structurally re-indexed, and its logistical value has been reduced to zero. For Moscow, this isn't just a lost cargo, it's a massive hole in a balance sheet already bleeding from the costs of a prolonged war. By taking down this one tanker, the Alliance has compromised the entire Shadow Fleet supply chain. Think of it like a system-wide firmware crash. Every insurer, every captain, and every middleman working for Russia just saw their invisible protection vanish. The risk of doing business with Moscow just hit an all-time high, and the premium for illegal oil just became too expensive to pay. The most terrifying takeaway for the Kremlin is the Kyiv factor. The fact that Ukrainian intelligence forged in the fires of the Black Sea can now project power into the deep Atlantic is a strategic nightmare. Russia is now forced into an impossible dilemma. Do they pull their remaining submarines back to protect their borders, or do they keep trying to escort tankers and risk more humiliating defeats? Every move they make now is a lose-lose scenario. Let's talk about the math of this operation. For the price of a few dozen sono buoys and some flight hours for a P-8A, the Alliance neutralized a $400 million strategic asset and seized $42 million in illegal oil. That's a return on investment that would make the most aggressive hedge fund on Wall Street look like they're playing with pocket change. The lesson here is simple. You don't win a 21st century war by being the loudest person in the room outro, or the one with the biggest stealth toys. You win by being the smartest. You win by having the better firmware, the sharper AI, and a global alliance that can turn the entire ocean into a transparent trap. Moscow tried to play chess on a maritime board, but they didn't realize the alliance was already running a grandmaster-level simulation of every move they were going to make. So, what do you think? If you were the commander of that Russian submarine, would you have stayed to fight, or was the retreat the only logical move left? And for the tech geeks watching, what impressed you more? The acoustic sledgehammer that blinded the sub, or the surgical fast rope boarding by the Night Stalkers? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If your tactical analysis is sharp enough, I'll pin it to the top. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the technology that's changing the rules of war.